collectivism versus individualism. This is the first theme in Unifant's book, and I quote from the book. The Japanese prefer to work as members of groups rather than individually. This characteristic is often cited as one of the most important in explaining Japan's economic success. The instinct for group rather than individual action is carried over in politics. That seems like a small thing. This seems like well, if you mention it like that, it seems rather small. But coming to Japan, I believe this is one of the most significant differences in culture between Japan and European and American countries. The difference is very fundamental, and it's even very difficult it was very difficult for me to understand. Why? Because we are so fundamentally ingrained with the concept of I being the center of the universe, that when coming to Japan, it's almost it's almost like a culture shock to realize that people in Japan put the group ahead of themselves, and that results in far-fetched differences. We looked at a video from Geert Hofstede last Saturday to kick it off, and Geert Hofstede describes a lot of differences between individualistic cultures and collective cultures, and there you can get an idea of the differences. For example, if I remember correctly, there's more power distance in collective cultures, and there is people walk faster in individualistic cultures. I don't remember everything. Anyway, he gave a lot of differences that are indeed of big influence, and what was very noticeable, for example, is the education system. If you look at how children are being educated in Japan now, we saw a video that showed a rather idealistic view of the Japanese education system, but I believe it kind of amplifies the characteristics. We saw how children are being very polite to their teachers, to every child was thanking the teachers, the people who prepared the food. They were very organized. They got up in line. They cleaned the classroom together. They did everything together. They did everything in a very organized manner, and everybody seemed to be very happy that way. On the other end of the spectrum, we saw classrooms in the United States that were total chaos, where the individual was totally in the center of everything. We saw a mini society where people did not want to be together, where people were striving to get a grips of their own position versus their individuals. There was a lot of aggression, there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of chaos. That is the other end of the spectrum, and this idea of individualism gives a very strong drive to identity. We saw a video of a motivational speaker in a black school in New Jersey, Patterson, New Jersey, who was appealing to a group of black high school students that he was ashamed of them, that he felt that the problems that he saw in the black schools were different from the problems that he saw in white schools, that he saw in Latino schools, that black kids were not even trying, that they're always getting jokes and never paying any attention, never even putting any effort in passing the exams. And that is, I think, is very illustrative that there are many people within our Western society, in the individualistic society, who don't feel that they even belong to that society, who are deliberately putting themselves out of society by not taking the exams, by not trying to even be part of the culture that they belong, that they live in, because they don't feel that they belong, and they alienate themselves from that society, and that kind of alienation leads to criminal behavior, leads to a lot of conflicts, leads to disharmony, unharmony in Western society. So last Saturday we focused a lot on, okay, what are these characteristics of these societies? We looked at extreme examples, as I mentioned. We also looked at some very successful examples. For example, the video of Mr. Hester, who was dealing with children who had difficulties in their education, and by providing them context, by creating expectations, by creating mini societies within the classroom with a clear contract, with clear expectations, by making clear to them that he was a teacher and he was going to create consistency and set expectations to these kids. He was able to reach them and actually provide them with a good education. But it is very challenging in westernized and individualized societies to create the same kind of teamwork as we see in Japan. Something that happens instinctively. That was also highlighted by a Westerner, a Canadian guy who was kind of surprised about what was happening in Japan. He was describing his surprise when he went skiing and everybody on the bus was helping to get his gear out of the bus. That would not happen in Canada. When children got off the school bus, they would line up and bow to the bus driver. That would never happen in Canada. These kinds of simple but symptomatic and very important differences are of great influence, not only for these small things that we see outside, but also in society. And in the business society, in Japanese business society, we see the same kind of attitude, the same kind of people. Once they grow up, they form companies, and they also translate that culture into their working habits. So the influence, the simple phrase, okay, Japan is a collectivist society, has a lot of impact throughout daily life in Japan.
But actually, you showed 3 or 4 videos. You talking about, I think, not only individualism or collectivism. Japanese has own culture. I told you Confucianism, or sort of unique culture they have. So I told benevolence and righteousness is very much influencing for their behavior behind that scene. So you said that teaming and American people is American children very much individualism, and they try not to organize teaming. But I think very much influenced by their culture. And black people is a different history, as you know. This is completely different from white people. So I recommended to you, white people student is elite, especially elite people. They are studying very hard. Try to get in the best university. It's so hard for studying every day instead of just like you show the video. And I think even in the ordinary American student, they don't have kind of Japanese lifestyle, student style, especially for lunchtime, just you showed, they don't, they are not like that, and also they are not so much polite for the teachers and not polite for each others and for not polite for lunch serving people, and this is kind of cultural difference. So it's kind of
the school that
phenomenon.
they show is